It's been a while since we've done a Kickstarter on the show here. This is AI War 2. It has 696 backers. They're going for quite a bit of money.
They're only 10%.
Yeah, they're going for like $300,000, and they've only got 29K. But they still have 29 days to go. I wasn't so sure about this one, and then I watched the video, and I think I'm all in. Plus, also, day one Linux support, they claim, which I'm a big fan of. So check this out.
Okay, when did you last feel proud of winning a game? AI War can be that game. Your fleets are surrounded deep in enemy territory. Come out of nowhere, strike, and then disappear back to your own planets. But do not get cocky. Look, you're trying not to be noticed, and an easy target isn't always a smart target. The AI essentially plays a board game like Risk. You're playing a grand strategic RTS.
I love it.
If the AI ever decides you're a big enough threat, you're dead.
So you basically lay low. Lay low.
That is really cool.
The first AI War, well, you already know all that. So what's new? Well, there's better performance, better networking, better multi-threading. We're adding modability. The graphics are better, and they're in 3D. And they actually perform better. We're cleaning up the UI and making sure that you can tweak or mod it. We've even added technologies that let you customize your ships. The sense of scale is much larger. Isolated planets, well, they've now become solar systems. Lonely units, well, they're now squads.
This thing is pretty neat.
They just took everything up to 11.
And something tells me that crowdfunding may be a bigger topic in today's episode of the Unplugged show. So with that, let's get it started. This is Linux Unplugged, episode 166 for October 11th, 2016. Welcome to Linux Unplugged, your weekly Linux talk show that's feeling a little negative in the freedom dimension. My name is Chris.
My name is Wes.
Hello, Mr. Wes.
The value of this is negative.
We have a great show today. There's going to be a theme that you might notice that'll just sort of pop up as we run
Look
through.
what we did.
And of course, we've got our open source project updates, some big news. I'm really excited to talk to some of our old friends, to cover a few big accomplishments. There is a Wayland story tucked in here that I'm excited about, but also, let's get real. Will you get real with me for a moment? Can we get
try.
real?
Let's do it.
We're going to have to talk about Mate. Things are changing here. Things are going big. Big league.
Momentum.
Huge. I think there's actually a legitimate transition, not to just joke around about it, but I think there's actually something massive happening here, and I want to talk about it today. Also, later on in the show, we're going to run some interviews with an individual named Andy. And Andy will talk about how his company generates new leads by fixing bugs in open source. So they submit bug patches, they see their names on that bug patch, and I got to work with that company, and they end up getting consulting business. It's a new way to make money with open source that's a lot like the old way, with a few tweaks. Using large-scale projects, we'll talk about it in today's Unplugged. So there will be a lot to cover. But before we go any further, it is our duty to bring in that virtual lug. Time-appropriate greetings, Mumble Room.
Happy Christmas.
Hello.
Happy Christmas. Yes, hello, everybody. And some of them are joining us in a beer. And we are drinking today Vanilla Cream Lights Out, an extra stout. This is a hell of a beer,
It
Wes.
is a little bit extra.
It is a little
A hefty
extra.
7.7%.
And you know, that vanilla cream makes it nice and smooth. So
it's really a very drinkable beer.
Mr. Pope, you'll be drinking a Christmas beer, and we'll be drinking a vanilla cream.
Let me just have another one.
From Bend, Oregon, too. So it's another...
Just our neighbors in the south.
You have yet to bring... You've only brought local beer so far.
I think there was one exception that was in Wyoming.
Oh,
There's
really?
that Melvin.
Oh, okay.
Which was very good.
I like Wyoming, so we'll allow
We'll let that slide.
We will allow it, yeah. There is much to cover today, and I want to start with one of the interesting updates, and it really required a huge investment here on the Unplugged program. We had to put in a lot of extra wiring, additional conduit.
It's a mess.
And unfortunately, if everything works as planned, the next few moments of the show may be absolutely silent, but it's imperative that we get an update from a friend of the show, so we're going to introduce a new feature, the Cone of Silence.
The Cone of Silence.
Come on, Mr. Ike, step into the cone here.
How do you do?
Hello, sir. Welcome back to the show. It's been a little while.
It has indeed, and I apologize in advance, but my voice is almost completely gone.
Yeah, it's kind of adorable.
We'll forgive you.
You're kind of adorable like that. So I constructed this cone of silence. I don't think it's just us. Nobody can hear us in here. And I wanted to get a little update on what you guys are doing over on the Solus project. I noticed some back and forth on Twitter about the Patreon, and I noticed some back and forth about ISOs. What's going on over there, and what secrets do you want to just share between you and I?
So this is what we agreed on Twitter earlier on. Like, nobody else can hear us, and this is not recorded.
Did you not hear? I have the cone of silence. It's the cone of silence.
It's a private, personal moment, just us three.
Completely confidential. Okay. There's 3 of us now. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I snuck in under the
I think Josh might have gotten a key too.
Right. I think so.
Yeah, but
Okay. So like, the room is getting bigger, but okay.
otherwise, it's totally private.
Recently, we've been building up to the 1.2.1 release, and I know for a lot of people by now, they're probably thinking 1.2.1 has got to be phantomware by now. But it is happening, and now we've got into the last 10%, and the last 10% is always the hardest. That 90% before, you race through that, you're generating news all the time. So the most recent news for us over the last few days, mainly last night actually, I finished up LVM2 and encryption support in the installer, which is something that people have been requesting for a long time. So now in the Solus installer, we can do full disk encryption automatically for them.
Oh, that's great.
Which is like LVM2 on top of Lux. It's very, very simple. They can choose to use LVM2, and then they can choose to additionally encrypt it as well.
That's awesome.
So that literally landed just last night, and about 5 or 6 o'clock this morning, I actually finished the encryption support. So it was a bit of a late night.
and while you're sick, nonetheless, too.
Yeah, I mean, it was easier to do that than to deal with being sick, to be honest with you.
Boy, isn't that the truth? How are you feeling like the crowdfunding's going in Patreon? It's something we've been talking about here behind the scenes a lot. And I've been more and more worried that it might not be the right platform for a large project, even or a project that wants to become large one day. What are your experiences so far?
Well, I think I'm going to have to agree with you there. I mean, we've had Patreon for a long while. At the moment, I think it's hovering just over $550 a month or something. Now, that's been running up for a few months, and basically, I didn't take anything out for about 5 or 6 months now. Just to let it build up, like a rainy day fund. And at the moment, there's like 2,500 in there. So you can kind of see the picture that it does fluctuate quite a lot. Mm-hmm. And, it gets to the end of the month and then suddenly 15, 20 pledges have gone. So it's not a reliable source of income at all. And 550 or whatever it is at the moment, it's not going to cut it, yourself. So, I mean, it's been funded out of my own pocket now for a very long time. Right. So
a labor of love.
That's servers. That's even my electric for, I'm running like a big Xeon server under my desk here as well. We got several servers. We got the websites, SSL certificates. And then there's the hardware as well. So by no means does it cover it. But it's kind of one of those ones with Solus. We never set out to be financially successful. It's just... Well, there was a comment on Twitter earlier on because I was very surprised, but oh my God, Ubuntu actually put a post up asking about the future Linux desktop and was it Solus, which was a bit of a jaw hit the floor moment. It's like, that's oh my God, Ubuntu. But then someone said, they put it there very well. They said Solus is now mainstream. It's like, you're kind of right. It's not like Solus was a year ago where nobody knew what it was. Mm-hmm. Everyone kind of knows what Solus is now. They've all heard about it. So it's one of the more mainstream Linux distributions. Everyone knows it's for the desktop.
Yeah, so sure has happened fast, though.
Yeah, I mean, a lot faster than we intended it to be honest with you. So that's why we have to add things now.
Is there, I guess, do you want to just do a plug for the Patreon right here since we just mentioned it? Since we might as well, if people are curious about the project, where do they go?
Yeah, I mean, if people go to patreon.com/Solus, then you can support one of us poor little devs. Like we get locked in the cage and we get abused thoroughly. So just a few dollars a month and you'll help us to keep the lights on.
Yeah. All right, I relinquished the cone of silence.
It's done.
It's done here.
Welcome back, Mumble Room.
Wimpy, I kind of wanted to ask you, too, if you don't mind commenting on your thoughts on Patreon as a source for funding an open source project. So I picture maybe the potential audience member being somebody who has a project they're working on that does have a set amount of users, that does have a certain cost to run it, and they want to keep it going and keep it sustainable. How's your experience been with Patreon?
Patreon has been a positive experience, and certainly is responsible for about 50% of the money that gets invested into Ubuntu Mate.
Oh, wow.
And then there's the PayPal supporters. There's between 300 and 400 people giving some money each month, and then we've got some corporate sponsorship on top of that as well.
Yeah, so it's part of a blend.
But the Patreon is the amount that you can actually rely on, because you know month to month what's going to be coming in.
Yeah.
And that has been essential in supporting the project when we went through a very popular period where we were paying for all of our hosting and bandwidth, and that was expensive. The Patreon, got us through that. Now we've got the sponsorship with Bytemark. All of that money can be pushed towards funding development projects now. And so that's the thing I'm most excited about now, as we this month is the last month that we have any overhead from our previous hosting platform, and we can benefit fully from the Bytemark sponsorship. So that will then mean that the full crowdfunding, or nearly the full crowdfunding, there's a few odds and ends that we have to pay for, but a lot of the crowdfunding can now go towards development.
Yeah, that's I think that's an interesting way to look at it, as it's an important part of a blend overall,
right?
And it's definitely it's the number you can see that you have a good estimation. I mean, there's going to be probably some declines, but you get a good estimation of what you're
maybe like
some
a little
fluctuation
bit
month to month, but you get an idea, And very like Ike said, keep some money in reserve for unexpected expenses.
Well, let's remember this conversation when we get to the Mate update coming on a little bit later in the show. But before somebody freaks out in the chat room, we're going to do a gaming update, because the chat room's losing their crap right now. Oh my gosh, Wes, they're having a panic attack in there.
It's not our fault. Gabe's been pressuring us, so.
Mad Max is actually shipping on Linux.
Hey.
The World, I believe it's called maybe it's just Mad Max. I don't know if it has a subname, but October 20th. For Linux and the Mac
what is that?
I'm not familiar with that. That might be a version of.
Is that like Windows 8?
It's not suitable for gaming, that's for sure.
No, you don't play. Oh, those are those. Oh, right, that company that used to sell computers.
I thought it was called Next.
I thought they make iPhones now.
It's the stuff that comes with cheese.
Bum. So that's pretty cool. So there you go. There's your October 20th, 1 week out heads up about the outlandish post-apocalyptic world of Mad Max. You can go get your hands on it. Have some fun. I was just poking fun at the Mac. In fact, why don't we talk a little bit about the Mac here in a moment? But before we do that, I'm going to mention that I'm going to be at Meet BSD November 11th through the 12th. So basically 30 days, right? A month from now?
That's great.
Yeah. And if you're in the area, it's down by Berkeley. If you're down in that area and want to say hi, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. And if you're going to be at Meet BSD, well, you probably should go register.
So you're gonna bring like a Linux laptop?
Oh yeah, dude! I'm bringing Lady Jupes full of all Linux gear.
Wow.
To the BSD conference. Hell yeah! Oh yeah! I'm not going ashamed. I'm going as a proud Linux user.
Would you think about like putting True OS on one of your laptops or something just to blend in?
No. I like my backlighting and my keys to work, so I don't have any interest in that.
You're interested in recent CPU graphics support,
those kinds of things.
Yeah. No, we're just
the ability to run an Electron app would be nice. But I actually am really curious to see where their heads are at and how the BSD community does one of these things. Because I've gone to a lot of Linux events. I'm kind of curious to see what the differences are between a Linux community event and a BSD community event. And I think this is the one to go to.
It is. Just from what I've heard a bit coming up, it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful event.
And also, the format is one that I think is particularly appealing to me as somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience going to these conferences, because this is a mixed unconference format where there's scheduled talks and then there's also just community-driven, like, this is what we care about events.
So from your perspective, it's kind of an outsider. It's a lot more accessible.
There's a lot more to jump into.
Technical talks and...
Yeah. So there you go. So you can find out more at meetbsd.com if you're going to be down in the area. It's at the Clark Kerr campus. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's Clark Kerr or something, which is not. I don't think it's on the actual main UC Berkeley campus. I should probably get that.
You should get that figured out. Yeah, you're gonna have to get there. I don't know if you realize that.
I'm hoping that that's what
Hidea
Nav is
driving?
for. No, I'm going to drive us to about 45 minutes away, and then listener Ben is being nice enough to let me borrow his car.
Oh, really?
down there,
Well, thank you, listener Ben. That's awesome.
Yeah, Ben, he's actually been in the Rover Log before, so he might get another appearance in the Rover Log again. So that's sort of my plan, and then maybe meet up with folks. I'm just going to be down there for a few days, but if you're in the Berkeley area and want to hang out and say hi, that could be a lot of fun. So meetbsd.com if you want to hang out and chat, and let me know what you think about whatever's on your mind, particularly in the Linux world. DigitalOcean.com, that's what's on my mind. Go there and use our promo code to get a $10 credit. Go over to DigitalOcean.com, and remember, if you use our promo code, it's one word, all lowercase. You get yourself a $10 credit, DO Unplugged. You apply that $10 credit to your account, and then you could try out their $5 rig 2 months for free, or run one of their hourly machines and just run that balance until you're done with it. It's really kind of cool, and there's no risk there to that.
Right. You don't get overages. You don't get it's just they'll turn it off if you stop paying, but that's just fine.
Yeah. And it's a great way to try out the DigitalOcean services to see if it works for you. And they have data centers in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Germany, India. They have a really nice interface to manage all of this. It's
nice.
very simple, but yet very powerful. They have great, powerful machines that'll all use SSD storage. They have an interface that rocks, but they have an API that matches. And one of the semi-recent features that I think is really great and answered a lot of people's questions is this block storage. You can attach block storage up to 16 terabytes, all of it resizable, SSD-backed. Super cool. Play with that. And also, I had an MB server running up there for a long time, and this would be something I don't even have to have something massive, but just like the kids' movie collection, so it's available when we're traveling, would be wonderful.
I've really been enjoying it. It seems like they're picking and choosing. Something like AWS or Azure, or the bigger cloud platforms, they have 1,001 features, very complicated, lots of documentation. DigitalOcean seems to be taking the best, the floating IPs, the block storage. They're kind of taking the best of the bunch, and then so you have the features you need, but in a simple interface, something you can understand and get going in 10 minutes.
And way less than that. Probably a minute. I think that might be why I keep creating droplets, is when I just want to try out something I found on GitHub even, and I don't want to bother putting that on my machine for security reasons, for simplicity reasons, or whatever.
You just don't want to, install some more things that you don't need.
Yeah, and I can just spin it up in seconds on DigitalOcean, try it out, and then keep it or destroy it.
And you get that public IP, right? You don't have to worry about firewalls. You don't have to just boom.
Yeah. Super cool. And they make managing DNS, if you want to go that route, really easy too. And adding your SSH keys. All of it's great. All with different Linux droplets you can deploy and enjoy. DigitalOcean.com. Just use our promo code DO Unplugged. That's one word, lowercase. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Unplugged program, DO Unplugged. So we were teasing macOS. And I do actually have something kind of newsworthy to talk about with macOS. But before we get there, before we talk about that,
little thing.
Just an interesting diversion, because I've seen this floating around for a couple of weeks now, and you've probably heard of it before, but if you haven't, I think you're going to enjoy this. It's Xenix, and it was Microsoft's Unix back in the day. Microsoft, before they got all DOS happy, first experimented with creating a Unix-based operating system. And they called it Xenix, and it was part of a messy breakup between AT&T and IBM, and so it didn't really work out. But back in the late 1970s, Microsoft entered into an agreement with AT&T Corporation to license Unix from AT&T. While the company didn't sell the OS to anybody in public, it licensed it to other OEMs like Intel, SCO, and Tandy.
It's fun to hear that name.
As Microsoft had to face legal trouble due to the use of the Unix name, the company renamed it and came up with its own Unix distribution. So AT&T licensed Unix, was passed around to other OEMs as Xenix. However, in the early 1980s, IBM was looking for an OS to power its x86 PC. As IBM didn't want to maintain any ties with the recently split up AT&T, Xenix was automatically rejected.
Bum, bum.
To fulfill the tech giant's demand, Microsoft, they scrambled and they bought 86DOS from a Seattle computer products company and managed to convince IBM to use it in their systems. Slowly, Microsoft began to lose interest in Xenix and then traded the full rights of Xenix to SCO later on, because they were one of the partners. And that is how Microsoft started to create a Unix, was almost made it the base of their desktop operating system.
And then they went all wrong.
But because IBM didn't want to have any ties to AT&T,
Boy, those Unix wars sure were messy.
They were dirty.
I mean, we live in such a simpler, more open world. I'm very thankful for it.
I don't think a lot of us have a perspective of how dirty they were.
No, right? And I mean, like, you still had all the Unix goodness if you were lucky enough to be able to afford it and have a big enough system to run it on, but those were different times.
Back in my day. All right, so now speaking of a Unix desktop that doesn't make a very good Unix, macOS 10.12 has a broken poll. A broken poll. The poll function, which actually breaks things like curl. So curl doesn't work on macOS anymore, which that actually does suck quite a bit.
That does? Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that sucks. And I thought this first comment from ITP on Hacker News was pretty well put. He says, I can't say I'm surprised. I used to be responsible for the port and upkeep of relatively low-level products on OS X. It was far and away the most troublesome platform. We would frequently run into bugs that have been reported on Open Radar for years without having been addressed. Offhand, I remember spending the better part of 2 days trying to understand a bug that was traced to a core routine issue. OS X was just not saving a required register known and reported for 5 major versions of the OS. I remember discovering the unnamed semaphores don't work on OS X. Also, I'm not surprised that poll would be broken, nor am I surprised that it was broken again because it's been broken in the past. Right. The only thing that surprised me more is how many people continue to insist that macOS now just macOS is a great Unix. It might be a nice desktop, but it is definitely not a great Unix. And I think that is the takeaway point. It might make a great desktop, but don't fool yourself into thinking you're getting a great Unix desktop power workstation or something. It's not that.
At least part of that is like, when they started building Mac OS X, and for a long time they compete with like what the Unix kernel or Linux kernel, Linux userland was doing, right? And you got this nice UI, you got Photoshop, you got all that on the platform, as well as you could run Bash and curl and all that thing in a shell. But they haven't spent any time or energy or money on working on that userland on those kind of kernel features like poll or like any of that. And the BSDs, Linux, that we're all moving on and doing more things. And so suddenly you're like, well,
but what's weird about it is they're breaking stuff in their Unix land that they just simply wouldn't be broken. But they're like, they won't just leave it be. They're breaking it almost proactively, which is super frustrating. Then this is a segue, but then you combine that with their shocking lack of hardware updates. You start to wonder, what is their long-term vision for the macOS platform and for their Intel machines? And so it's within that context that our next story comes up. Linus was talking about ARM. He was at a fireside chat. He was talking with David Russling, who is the Chief Technology Officer of ARM Tools. And so this guy,
he knows ARM.
This guy really knows ARM. And so he's asking Linus questions about ARM. And Linus is being very honest. He's like, ARM doesn't really excite me.
Which is interesting, too, just given Linus's history with, one, Linux, and two, his history designing processor architectures.
And he talked about not just because of the instruction set. He says it's more than that. It's the whole ecosystem. So I grabbed just a little bit of the interview so we could hear it here on the show. I'll just play a moment of it. And this is, I'll link in the show notes, too, if you want to watch the entire thing.
This is no bad thing. Do you have a favorite architecture?
That's a very obvious question. I mean, x86 is still the one I favor most, and the reason for that is the PC. Not because of the architecture. It's because of the infrastructure. It's because it's there and it's open. And it's open in a way that no other architecture is. And it turns out the instruction set and the core of the CPU is not very important. And it's one of those big differentiating factors that people kind of fixate on, but it really doesn't matter very much.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
What matters is all the infrastructure around that instruction set. And x86 right now has all that infrastructure, and it has it at a lot of different levels. ARM obviously has it on the low end. There's no question that if you're in mobile, you are pretty much ARM, and we can start forgetting about MIPS and everybody else. I've been personally, obviously, pretty disappointed in ARM. Not as an instruction set, although I've had my issues there too, but as a hardware platform, it's still not very pleasant to deal with. And
and it goes on. He says, of course, you guys know that. You guys are working with ARM all the time. So now we segue from this, talking about ARM, to talking about Wes's $9 computer, the chip, which he's brought into the studio here. So Wes bought the chip, which you might have heard us talk about before at getchip.com. It's the world's first $9 computer. And you got it right here in your hot little hands, Wes. Tell me about it.
It just showed up in the mail. It'd been, it got sent to my old address. So
it's itty bitty.
It is itty bitty. I also got the HDMI adapter. I've really only plugged it in like a tiny amount, but they do kind of come with like, unlike say like the Pi, like they have a little plastic bottom already. So it's like a little more rough and ready to go.
So it came with that plastic bottom?
Yep.
You didn't add that on, huh?
Nope.
Huh, that's nice. Did you really pay $9 though?
Well, no, I paid like $21, I think, with the HDMI output adapter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it has a gigahertz processor, Wi-Fi BGN built in, 4 gigs of high-speed storage. Is that an SD card that came with it? Is that when they say high-speed storage, they mean an SD card on the USB bus? Is that high-speed storage?
I'm not sure.
Chip comes with storage on board.
There we go.
Yeah, well, there's no need to purchase. So it actually is high-speed storage.
Yes, exactly.
Bluetooth 4.0, and you got it with the HDMI port, and it comes with 512 megabytes of RAM. Anybody in the mum room got their hands on this thing yet? This chip?
I will say, well, I don't know what I'm going to quite do with it. I bought it mostly to support it. Oh, go on.
Currently running.
Whoa. I think that was a hello? I think that was a Cylon. That might have been a Cylon.
It might have been a Cylon. We're compromised.
That might have been a chip.
We're compromised.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Pocket chip, though? Their little case around it?
I was going to ask you if you were tempted to get that.
Yeah, and I have a friend who has one, and it's pretty cool. It's he's still kind of learning Linux, but it's like a great little platform to have on the bus. Playing with Linux, you have a real shell, you can do stuff. It also seems like something that Noah might be interested in, just knowing how much he wants to have a real Linux computer in his back pocket all of the time.
That's true.
And it's not like, it's not like a full laptop or anything, but you could get a lot done. I could imagine doing some SSH and then doing real work or building things or, like bouncing some servers or whatever you need to do.
Is it a QWERTY keyboard or is it, no, it's not. It has a QWERTY layout. It's like a multifunction keyboard.
Yeah.
So this would be an obvious thing to do with your chip computer is the Pocket chip. So I think that's a really smart move they did, where they're like, well, we'll just sell a great accessory for it to give people something to do with it. And the Pocket chip's $69.
And I do still like the Onion Omega stuff that Alan was talking about. I think that's maybe a more interesting platform. But when this was first coming out, it seems like an interesting kind of middle ground between, like the Arduino microcontroller layer and then something more like a Raspberry Pi.
This seems more friendly for some reason. Like the pitch of it is more fun toy kind of thing. That's kind of neat. And maybe that's the Pocket chip that's kind of giving me that vibe because it makes it seem more like a game, more like a toy. So if you don't use it, if you don't get the Pocket chip, what's sort of your use case for something like this? For a $9, you got a gigahertz and 512 megs of RAM. It's a gigahertz ARM, but damn, that's amazing for even $20.
Yeah. I really don't have a use case yet. So if anyone in the audience has something that you want me to try, I'd be happy to. I'm going to try to find somewhere I can put it around the house. It does have HDMI out, so I will test, what does that kind of look like? What can you play with that? But it also has the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in, so I could see it, if you have it does have a USB port here, so any kind of sensor or anything else that was integrated over USB that you wanted to put on your network, or like we were talking about that USB IP kernel support with Linux.
God, that'd be great.
You could plug that right in here, just set it right next to it.
If it's that would be really an interesting use case for it. Tiny remote sensors or remote IP USB could be game changers.
But it's the nice thing where it's like you're not writing C++ code and compiling it to run on Arduino. You're it's the Linux user land.
That is really cool. Mr. Wiseass, you had a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have been pinging to the outside and doing speed tests so it can tweet if my speed sinks below a certain level.
So you're kind of keeping an eye on your ISP and kind of getting a little bit of a heads up when they're not delivering what you're paying for. That's pretty clever.
Exactly.
I like that. Oh, maybe that's why I should do that too.
I'm on at Lady Jupiter. Oh, I wonder, and I would love suggestions on maybe the best tool to do this. Or tools, but at Lady Jupiter, my internet connection slowly degrades over a period of few days, and it seems to be based on my usage, because what solves it every single time is I reboot the MiFi. I restart the MiFi, I pull the battery out, put it back in, let it boot up, then I plug into the cradle point.
I was going to say, is this some sort of traffic shaping, but it doesn't seem like it, no.
I don't know. I don't know if it is, and maybe when I reestablish a connection to the network, it clears. That could be a possibility. Or it is like the operating system on this little MiFi device could be completely falling apart.
Right.
And maybe it's like running out of RAM or whatever.
And it may be that Wi-Fi's aren't, or MiFi's or whatever, aren't quite designed for the throughput that you put through them.
Sure. So,
or there's memory leaks.
I'm going to do a video on all this stuff one day.
Oh, I'm excited already.
But I'm still building it all out. But I have a WeBoost cellular booster that captures all LTE bands from all carriers.
That is so cool.
Brings them into Lady Jupiter and then amplifies them by 60 dB. Yeah, it's awesome. So I can go from 1 bar to 4 bars.
How big is that?
Not big. Wow. The trickiest thing about it is the antenna that receives the wireless signals and the little thing in Lady Jupiter that's rebroadcasting the signals. The two can never meet, and if the booster main antenna is even picking up the rebroadcaster, it totally shuts down.
Right.
Like,
yep.
It does a feedback loop and it
just,
totally and in an RV. That is a particular challenge because basically the RV is barely long as the minimum requirements are for these things to be apart. So I have a booster coming into this MiFi. It's blasting it with a bunch of signal, and so when everything's going great, I'll get 23 megabits maybe on a and I'm
that's not bad, especially for parking in the boonies.
Yeah, exactly. I am on the coast. I am literally on. I walk 10 minutes and I'm in the ocean. So I'm like far out in the boonies as it can be.
Right.
And to go from 1 bar to 4 is 20 megabits. I was like, oh God, this makes this usable. This is like
I have internet.
Yeah, and then a few days into it, I'm down to 2 megabits. So of course, stupid Chris, first thing I'm thinking is well, maybe my antenna fell down, so I'm climbing back
Hardware
up on my
problems,
roof. Yeah,
right.
I'm troubleshooting
You're
the
all the way at
connections.
layer 1.
Yeah, I'm redoing all the connections and still 2 megabits. 2 megabits. I'm like, well, shit, this is just as bad as it was before I got the booster. Like, what the hell's going on here? And then as a part of my troubleshooting, I did every piece individually so I could determine what was the cause. And of course, I made sure to troubleshoot the MiFi sort of separately. And sure enough, huge difference after a clean reboot. And it's better with the booster, but even without the booster, I could get 6-7 megabits. And it would go down to like 2 megabits. And now with the booster, after I reboot, I get to like 22 megabits. But
so
after about 5 days, I don't know what's on it.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the last things. Right?
It's older, I think.
We have these weird proprietary little things that join us to the LTE networks. I wonder if has Noah experienced any of that with his like ThinkPads built in?
I don't know. But see, this is running 24/7 continuously for days.
Right.
Now
it's your gateway. I mean.
It's on, yeah, and then I have stuff that's all on the LAN that I have stuff that determines what goes out over the internet, but the actual connection itself is open and running all the time. Mm-hmm. So I've been wondering if there would be a good open source tool to easily warn me when it's dropped below a certain threshold. So like if I could monitor, but I don't want the act of testing it to eat up the precious amount of bandwidth I do have, because over the MiFi, it's not just the speed, but anything that introduces additional latency or traffic sort of degrades the connection for everybody.
Right.
It's not like 20 megabits on a cable connection. So I would love to be able to test that and map it and alert myself when it starts to say get down like the 5 megabit range or something, without having to also stress the connection all the time.
That's a good question. Because I've kind of wondered about that too. Like, it would be nice to just have that, something that makes it really easy to kind of see your graphs of like upstream bandwidth.
So I was thinking a Raspberry Pi of sorts that would. So I don't know if anybody has a suggestion. Tweet me at ChrisLAS or something like that I could run on a Pi or run on or I guess I could run it on a laptop. For a few days.
Because there is always the worst case scenario where you run a cron job with speed test CLI.
Yeah.
And
just
emails
speed test.
if the results are below this. But it'd be cooler to have something that like also graphs the output, thresholding, and you could always send it into something like Graphite or Grafana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would something that would give me sort of a historical, like, this is where you're starting to get down.
And then maybe you can kind of observe the trends and really figure out what's going on.
Those guys over at the Ubuntu podcast have been getting suggestions from their audience on things to do with their Pis. So
we'll have to pick up from there.
Yeah, if one comes your way that sounds like it would maybe solve my problem, Mr. Popey or Mr. Wimpy, pass it along to me, because I'd be really curious to know if there's a set of tools out there, or even like a ready-built distro for network monitoring. That seems like that should be a thing that would run on with like a Raspberry Pi image or something.
Well, we've had a bumper crop of feedback on the Raspberry Pi stuff.
Yeah.
For the next episode, it's
great.
been running for weeks since we asked for it. Yeah, and the projects are getting more and more interesting.
I will catch the next one then if there's another batch out there. Not that I wasn't going to anyway. Before we go much further, while I'm talking about MiFis, why not mention my friends over at the Ting Network? Oh, you see how we just did that right there?
Sneak it in there.
Linux.ting.com. That's where you go to support the show and get the discount. Linux.ting.com will take $25 off your first device, or it'll give you $25 in service credit if you bring a device. What's nuts about Ting is their customer service. You know what? Have I ever played this video here on this here show, Wes? This video from the Ting customer service. This is what it's like.
We look at it a lot.
This is what it's like. No, this is the video right here.
Thanks for calling Ting. This is Isabel speaking. How can I help you? Hello? Thanks for calling Ting. This is Isabel speaking. How can I... Hey, this is Isabel at Ting. For service in English, press 1. Para el servicio en español, presione 2. To talk about phones, press 1. To talk about something else, press 2. To speak to an operator, press 0. Please hold while we direct your call to the first available agent. Your time is important to us. Thank you for your patience.
I assume they include this in all of their training videos.
That's what the people want.
Thanks for calling Ting. This is Isabel speaking. How can I help you?
Oh, wow. That was quick.
That's really good. Linux.ting.com. So they have really great customer service. They have a super good dashboard to manage all this. And I don't know if I mentioned it yet, they also have CDMA and GSM services.
That is the most exciting part right there.
And then no locked devices, no contracts, no early termination fee. I think this is super nice because if you want to go like really high-end phones, and it's one that after you use it for a bit, you want to be able to hand it down to somebody or give it to somebody else, this kind of structure makes the continued viability of a phone like that last way longer than these quote-unquote agreements you get in now with the carriers.
Oh, man. And it's way easier to understand.
And then on the other spectrum, it's really easy to do like the budget value phones. They just did a blog post for what they call 5 Whys smartphone choices for less than $200, and they have the list broken out here on their blog. Yeah, I feel like the Blue Life 1X probably doesn't get enough discussion. It's got a 5.2-inch 1080p IPS display with a 424 pixel density, which is actually
that is not bad.
Pretty high end, yeah. It's got Gorilla Glass 3 scratch resistance too, which is not bad, and a decent camera on it, and it's got full GSM 12-band compatibility. And it's $158, no contract, no other termination fee.
I almost kind of want that just as like a backup phone in case I break my main.
Yeah, it's $6
right? Like that's
for the line.
Yeah, that's
and then
great.
Just your usage. You just pay for your usage. Check them out. Linux.ting.com, and a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Unplugged program. You got to go to Linux.ting.com to get the discount and to support the show. And thank you everybody for doing that. And thanks to Ting for sponsoring us. Holy moly!
You know, I did just purchase myself a Pixel.
You did it.
You know, I think it'll be running on Ting.
Now, you did the Play or did you? How did you? Did you do that? Yeah.
Yep.
You did the
Bought
Play
it right
version.
from Google.
Really?
Yep. And one for the wife.
Oh man, I can't. Whoa, really?
Yeah.
You really?
And she's
went all in.
She's moving from iOS.
Wow.
So that'll be an interesting story as it develops.
I'll be really curious to hear your feedback on User Air 7, which will come out probably pretty soon. We talk about the Pixel in there.
Wes putting his marriage on the line there.
Yeah, right. Well, hey, that was her. It was her idea.
Really?
Yes.
What pushed her over?
Well, I mean, her current iPhone has like damaged screen, kind of a little bit. Like, it's not bad, but it's like she was ready for a new phone.
What version of iPhone?
But she
is
wasn't. iPhone 6.
So okay.
I mean, it wasn't a bad phone at all.
Yeah.
But she just didn't seem interested in the 7,
Yeah.
and she looked at it and she was like, okay.
Yeah.
The first thing she said was like, "This looks like an iPhone." So it's like it's probably this.
Specifically
it'll
an iPhone 6, actually.
Exactly.
With a really tacky two-tone back. But other than that, I'm really curious to hear what you think about the shape, because I think I'm really going to dig that wedge shape.
I know. I think I am too. It's kind of sexy.
Yeah, and it's going to probably feel good on the table. So I'll be living vicariously through you, Mr. Wimpy. You don't happen to have an Ubuntu Touch device still, do you?
I do. Several.
And now I've been negligent in checking in with you over the last few weeks. I think we've had like a 3-week break, but how has so far your Ubuntu phone experience gone? Popey switched his main driver Wimpy. I'm sure Popey has too, actually. I think that's why. Wimpy switched his main driver. You don't use it as your main phone?
No.
What? Okay, well, I want to hear about that too. But let me get back to Wimpy for a second. So Wimpy switched his main driver over to Ubuntu Touch. And one of the big areas I wanted to hear about from Wimpy was like, how does it work with managing podcasts and doing your audio in the car? Because that's a big function for me in the phone.
Agreed.
So Wimpy, it's been a few weeks. I've been negligent. I'm kind of curious why you are why. I'm kind of curious how it's gone, and then I'll get to Popey and find out why he hasn't been using it. But how is your experience so far the last few weeks since we've chatted?
So in terms of all of the, doing the social network stuff and email and looking up websites and all of that sort of thing, that's all just fine.
Is that mostly native apps or is that web apps?
A mixture.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it depends what it is. There's like a native app for Reddit. There's native apps for some things and wrapped web apps. But what's happening now is that those wrapped web apps are starting to have native elements embedded within them. So it's still a web app, but it's got more of the native controls integrated with the web experience. So that's noticeable in things like some of the new Twitter apps and the Google Plus apps.
Does that
and things like
require so Google Plus, are they doing something specifically to enable that in their web app, or is this a new feature of the...
Yeah, so the developers of these apps are embedding their own controls that exercise parts of Google Plus to make it feel more like a native application.
That's nice to see.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The new Google Plus app I'm using is very good.
So it sounds like the ecosystem is really not doing badly at all.
It's kind of coming together right before your very eyes.
It is. There, it's slowly, things are improving. Although, to your earlier question, if your use case is podcasting in the car, I can't recommend it.
How come?
The Bluetooth is not reliable enough, and the native podcasting app is not reliable enough at the moment. So I'm still using my Pocket Cast web app to do my podcast listening.
And you're just wiring it in?
Well, I've had a change in circumstances, so I don't need to have it work with the car anymore.
Right.
I just need to get this. I'm a bit old-fashioned. I plug headphones into my phone in order to listen to things.
Headphones, I'm not familiar with that. Is that a new thing?
Yeah. No, it's an old thing that's going out of fashion fast, apparently.
Apparently.
Haven't you heard about Lightning already? Come on.
So how about the really boring stuff like long-term performance? Is it staying fairly consistent, and battery life?
So battery life, it comfortably lasts me a day, although my podcast wrapper for Pocket Casts has to force keep the screen on to ensure that the podcast keeps playing. So obviously you're going to take a battery hit if you do lots of that without charging in between. But if you're not doing that sort of thing, I always have Bluetooth enabled. I have it paired with my 2 Pebble watches, and it's always connected to Wi-Fi and 4G, and it comfortably lasts the day. More than comfortably lasts the day.
That's wonderful. So no regrets overall?
No regrets. I'm pleased I've done it. I've certainly seen sort of the rough edges, but I went into this knowing that I was going to encounter rough edges and that I wanted to help to identify them and solve them. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I have a question. Something that seems interesting, like we've talked a lot about it as like a replacement platform for Android. I'm just curious, how much do you use the fact that it's, a little bit more like desktop Linux? Do you do things on the Ubuntu system that might require root on Android or might require weird workarounds on Android that are easier on the Ubuntu system?
Not really. The only thing I do is on the tablet, I do have that connector. So I've got the wireless screen dongle for one of the screens upstairs and downstairs, and I do use the tablet to cast the screen to those. And on the phone, I do that occasionally, mostly for the fun factor. But the terminal experience is, much more Linux than anything on the other devices. So I do use that from time to time. That's really quite good.
That's great.
So the enthusiast in me kind of wishes I just had an extra phone to mess around with right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at with this. So thank you for letting me pick your brain on that. Wimpy, don't go far because I want to talk about a few other things here in a second. But I cannot go any further right now without taking a moment and asking Popey.
I secretly use Arch Linux.
Popey, out of anybody in the mumble room that I thought would be using Ubuntu on their phone as their daily driver, I incorrectly assumed it would be you. I'm kind of curious maybe why you don't, and I hope the answer is not for competitive research because that feels like a cop-out. Don't say it!
So I have on my desk a Pro 5 running Ubuntu.
Sure.
And it's always right here on my desk, and I do daily updates. And I use my Pro 5 for podcasting, so I use the native podcast app Podbird. I don't know if I just don't experience the same bugs as Martin does, but it seems to work okay for me for like just playing a show and like playing whatever most recent things I want. Mm-hmm. I don't use it as my daily driver mainly, well, for two main reasons. One, I have banking apps and other things that they just aren't available on.
I do have that problem too. My bank has an app, and
I've made my own apps for that.
I have a bank. There's also an app for my kids' bank as well. So we have this whole pocket money thing where the kids can earn money, and it's managed through a phone app. And that's.
I now want to be one of your kids.
Only.
Yeah, how do we get on that list?
You don't. Oh man, I'm cracking the whip. I'll send you down the mine or clean the chimneys or something. So you probably don't want to do that.
Oh, okay.
I'll trade you some pebbles.
And that's the only other one is WhatsApp for a couple of people, but not many people I talk to with WhatsApp. But yeah, it really is just a few key apps that I can't use on Ubuntu phone. Really, that's the killer. It is always on. It's always sat here. I'm always carrying it with me, but it's not the one that's got my SIM in it. So if you phone me, it will be my Android phone that rings. It won't be the.
So rumor has it you'll be traveling in November to a canonical event. Would that be something where you might maybe bring an Ubuntu Touch phone with you for that thing, or do you still bring a different phone?
I carry multiple phones everywhere I go.
Like I used to be there.
When I sometimes when we go, there's a UK Ubuntu group where we meet up every year and go on a train where they sell. It's an old steam train where they sell beer on the train.
All right,
we call it the beer train. It's called the Real Ale Train, the Rat, and we all go on there and drink beer. But there's a couple of games that we play on Android and on iOS, which you need a wireless network, and I pull out my trusty BQE 4.5 and turn on hotspot, and everyone connects to my Ubuntu phone, and we're all playing with the Ubuntu phone being my wireless access point. So it has some uses that, I wouldn't have another device with me that was battery powered that was a wireless access point that I could just pull out my bag and turn that on and use it. So I use it for some weird niche things. It's just not necessarily the one that will ring if you phone me.
Interesting. Yeah. I've definitely done that for a while too. I've had phones that are either for testing, or when I had for a long time, I had a BlackBerry for work.
Chris, that's insane.
The other thing is the camera. The camera app isn't fantastic. It's missing some features, and I take a fair number of photos of my kids and my cats, of course, and other nonsense. And I need a reliable camera app to do that. I don't want to be that guy in 5 years' time who doesn't have photos of his kids because he was religiously tied to one phone.
Oh man,
yeah, that would be hard.
Yeah. That'd be a tough thing to live with.
But I mean, if you're the reason the Ubuntu phone became the next big thing, maybe it's worth it.
Maybe. Okay. This is good to pick.
I can't see myself running it.
Not a price I'm willing to pay.
So let's talk about let's just talk about the elephant that's been in the room. It's
a really pretty elephant.
Yeah, there is a trend where I think a lot of times in open source something gets forked, and we almost have a visceral, immediate reaction to laugh it off. Now, every now and then there's exceptions. I don't know if that necessarily happened when Nextcloud forked, for example, but most of the time, I think if you had heard that the GNOME project has moved on and declared that GNOME 2 is old and busted, and that in order to have a desktop of the future, it must be left behind. And a bunch of neckbeards came along and said, well, this will not stand. We're going to fork this GNOME 2 GTK2 desktop, and we're gonna keep it alive. I think a lot of people would have looked at that. I mean, if you remove everything that's happened in the last few years, and if you looked at that concept in its just raw, naked form, I think a lot of people would say, that's ridiculous. Once again, open source is splitting its resources. Nobody's focusing on the right thing. People are going off in their different camps, and it would be a laughable idea. Yep. Why would you take this old desktop paradigm that's old and busted, that's obviously needs to be replaced, which is, again, a bunch of assumptions being made, and try to fork it? That's a waste of everybody's time. But yet, here we are, 2016, and I think the Mate desktop is one of the most relevant desktops in the Linux landscape. I think it's one of the most widely used Linux desktops. It's had, thanks to the Raspberry Pi, a huge surgence on lower end hardware.
Massive deployment.
It's made a lot of us. Since it's launched now, a lot of us go, what? Why do people run XFCE again? I mean, it's literally taken that spot, and it's about, I believe it is currently transitioning into a totally different stage. And I think you're going to see a lot of it very soon. When you could probably start beginning to play with a lot of it when Ubuntu 16.10 Mate edition ships. I'll let Wimpy talk about that. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think this will probably be a chance to get to see a lot of this. There's some big things that are coming, including what seems to be essentially a from-scratch reworking of Ubuntu Mate to go to GTK3. I mean, this is taking a desktop that was designed around a traditional desktop paradigm and technology and moving it to be completely technologically compatible with the latest Linux desktop, at least for GTK3, while keeping an existing work paradigm that obviously tens of millions of users prefer.
Isn't that a fascinating thing? Like, when it was created, there's clearly this, community of people that said, like, well, wait, this is still working for us. So it's very interesting to watch it evolve.
At first, it almost felt like a stick in the mud position.
Yeah, like a anachronism almost, but functional. But clearly, they're very interested in taking on new technical things. It's just that there's also things they want to keep and refine.
It is almost so obvious in retrospect that I think we've almost missed what an interesting transition this is. And so I think there's a couple of things happening here. There's work happening upstream with Mate itself that's impacting any distro that can run it. And then there's a lot of work specifically going into Ubuntu Mate. And so before I put too many of the wrong concepts out there, I want to just make sure that I don't say anything more before I go to Wimpy and say, Wimpy, can you kind of enlighten us as what's going on with this GTK3 transition and why does it matter to end users? And then could you eventually get to where we could end up seeing it?
Okay.
It's a lot.
So Mate was obviously forked from GNOME 2 using the GTK2 toolkit, and it's been that way for a long, long time. And behind the scenes, GTK3 support has been added, and we were getting very close. And after the 1604 release, I really wanted to shift to GTK3 because I felt we needed to make that jump, otherwise we'd procrastinate and sit on it for longer, and so I spoke with the Debian maintainer and the Fedora maintainer back in April time, and we agreed a timeline that suited all three distributions to make the jump to a Mate GTK3 implementation so that we could all roll together with that. So Ubuntu, well, in fact, Debian Unstable is actually the first to benefit. So Debian Unstable got the full Mate 1.16 built against GTK3 at the weekend. It landed in Ubuntu 16.10 archives on Monday, and it's it's in Fedora, what will be Fedora 25. So those are three major distributions that are doing that, and then you've also got the hot and sexy new independent distros like Solus, who, when they go shopping for an alternative desktop environment, spot that Mate is now GTK3 and it's using modern technologies and its underpinnings.
Why does that matter to me, Wimpy, as Fedora or as Solus, or as why do I care if it's GTK3 versus GTK2?
Well, the main reason that you want GTK3 is because it's the gateway to even more newer technologies. So things like high DPI and eventually things like Wayland and Mia.
And isn't that sort of maybe the most important thing to note is high DPI and Wayland are not possible otherwise? I mean, how else can you accomplish it with GTK2? Is there any possibility?
Not really. I mean, you can do font scaling and things, but generally speaking, no, it's not really there in GTK2. And there's a whole raft of other reasons, but it's not just GTK3. Along the way, it's all the other technologies that have since been phased out or are being phased out that Mate has been adopting in order to keep it current and relevant, so that it moves with the latest technologies. So Mate looks like GNOME 2 always did. Even now, with the GTK3 implementation, in my opinion, it looks a little bit more polished because we've got some niceties from GTK3 that weren't there in GTK2, but it looks and works exactly like it did with GTK2. And that's quite a nifty achievement, I think, because what people miss is that the Mate team are preserving our desktop cultural heritage by, sticking with this project. It's not particularly glamorous to continually maintain a project that is effectively complete, because the objective of the project has been completed. We're just making sure it continues to work and it continues to.
Okay, so that's interesting. So are you saying, in a sense, they by keeping Mate relevant in terms of like the GTK, by moving GTK3, supporting things like Wayland and high DPI, but keeping the basic workflow the same, it sort of is the best way to pay respect and tribute and keep that workflow and that paradigm alive. It's not to enshrine it in like glass and never change it.
It's a living document, right?
Keep it going, keep it living.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a live. And the thing is that paradigm that GNOME 2 used, it is built on good design principles that still stand today. There are different ways that you can interact with computing devices, and the way that user interaction works in GNOME 2 and now Mate is well tested, well thought, and has years of work behind it. So it doesn't mean that it should be thrown out just because it's an old idea.
So what about...
After all, we're using operating systems that are based on old ideas that people came up with in the 60s and 70s.
So
just because it's an old idea doesn't mean it's a bad idea.
The other thing I think of when I think of GNOME 2 and Mate is I think of low resources, low memory footprint, low CPU overhead, low GPU requirements. Is there a way to honor that and make it still appealing to like low-end devices like Raspberry Pis, but still keep it modern with GTK3 and those things?
That's a little more challenging now. There's some additional memory overhead with using GTK3 as opposed to GTK2. Certainly, it's targeting the Raspberry Pi 3 is still possible. That's not an issue. But in terms of Ubuntu Mate, which has got a lot of additional scaffolding around it because it's got full accessibility stack and a whole load of other bits and pieces. In the 1704 cycle, I'm going to put some thought into how we can retain the rich feature set but rein in some of that excess in memory consumption, but without compromising the user experience. So that's going to be a goal for 1704.
Interesting. And 1610 is what, next week, if everything goes?
2 days. 2 days from now.
2 days? Oh,
the 13th, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I should get it installed and start kicking the tires and see how it goes.
If you go to the CD image, are you familiar with cdimage.ubuntu.com?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can get the daily live from there. If you get the Ubuntu Mate daily live, which is built today, that is our release candidate. And I'm really hoping that won't change, that is the version that will be the final version.
I am downloading it right now. Very cool. Yeah, I have been looking forward to trying out the 16.10 release because I usually jump in earlier, but this time I decided, since there wasn't like a feature that I was just freaking out about, I would wait till the release candidate stage. So I'm ready to jump in. I will also toss a link in the show notes. So there we go. Well, interesting, Wimpy. And so I guess kind of zooming out a few levels and kind of getting back to an overall theme that we've had this episode, this to me seems like we've recently had a huge burst, even more so in the last few years, but really just honestly, if you look at the last 6 to 7, 8 months, it feels like there's been a massive burst in development in Mate, which is benefiting a lot of distros. You mentioned Fedora, but also I think it's obvious that it's gonna benefit Ubuntu Mate as well. And so there's been work that's getting done, and I think part of it is probably thanks to a form of crowdfunding that you've been doing over at the Ubuntu Mate project, like you mentioned earlier, a blending of crowdfunding. And I gather you're devoting some of this funding towards the development. And I'm kind of curious if you could kind of just recap how that works for the audience and
Sure.
really like why not just hire somebody why not take some of these funds you're raising and just hire somebody to sit there and work on this stuff full time for you?
Well, you can do do that. You can hire people. And that is still a Patreon goal for Ubuntu Mate. If we get to a specific funding level, we'll have somebody work full time on it. That's an aspiration. But in getting there, I've actually found that you can get an awful lot of good momentum by breaking down small projects and handing off small projects to individuals and funding these discrete pockets of work. And during the 16.10 development cycle, so that's been running from basically the beginning of May until the end of October, the Ubuntu Mate crowdfunding has paid out about $6,200 to open source developers to work specifically on Mate Desktop and Ubuntu Mate projects. And that has made a massive difference to the project momentum, because I was originally planning to complete this transition to GTK3 at the end of the 1704 cycle.
End of 1704?
At the end of 1704, which is in June next year.
So you're a little ahead of schedule.
We're 6 months ahead of schedule.
Wow.
Yeah, so I planned that for a year we would just do that transition to GTK3 and all the other bits that we needed to port to GTK3. But all of that work has been done, and all of it has been funded from the investment that the Ubuntu Mate project gets. And also, Ike, notice I'm using the word investment. I read what you wrote about that, and I've changed all the language I use on the Ubuntu Mate website and what I say to say investment rather than donate, which is a little hat tip to Ike and some sensible thinking that he
is really smart.
He shared.
Really smart,
yeah.
That
because it really is an investment.
It is, and it's not technically a donation because it's not tax deductible. So that's a really good use of the word.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't been an investment, hasn't it? Because now it's that's a huge leap ahead in the schedule there.
Yeah. So what we're going to focus on now for Ubuntu Mate specifically in the 1704 cycle, Ubuntu Mate is just going to be about bug fixes, refinement, and polish. Not going to concentrate on bringing in new features and expanding the scope of the project. Just make what we've achieved in this 16.10 cycle move into GTK3 more reliable, more robust, more stable, and true to the origins of the project. So that's what 1704 is going to be. So a bit of a yawner by comparison, but I think important work that we're now afforded the time to do. And I've been setting up with some of the core Mate developers. We're going to do some bounty source type funding
that's
to
very cool.
expand the scope of this, project sponsorship. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to invest even more money in independent developers and open source developers that are interested in working on Mate and Ubuntu Mate over the next 6 months.
See, that puts you in a very cool place where it's like, at least some of your funding comes from this community Patreon angle, and then you kind of get to help shepherd it, and then through Bounty Source or other things, then go kind of give back to the community in a way where the whole thing is self-supporting and growing.
So
and when I post our monthly summaries, I explain who the developers are that have received money, how much they've received, what they worked on, and I also put their distro affiliation. And you'll notice in there that there are people from Debian, people from Fedora, people from OpenSUSE, and the most recent open content creator that has been rewarded through that program is Rotten, who's done some work for us just recently.
Nice.
And also from Jupiter Broadcasting.
Yeah, and I'll give you an insight. What Rotten's been working on is retouching some image assets, which are our first baby steps to high DPI support.
That's awesome.
That is, oh man,
good man, Rotten. Good, or Mr. Tennell.
Mr. Tennell.
I now call him. So that's Wimpy. That's a huge amount of progress, and I say good on you for taking 1704 release cycle and tightening it up, because let's be honest, the expectation with the Ubuntu Mate distribution isn't going to be rapid, crazy, revolutionary change every single release. There's going to be a certain point where people just want something that works really well to be refined and refined and refined. And I look forward to the process and watching that. So I'm obviously going to have to try out 1610, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get off of 1610 completely, I know RMH, you had something I wanted to get to, but I think I'll take it in the post show because we're running long. But I did want to put a feeler out there, and I'm kind of hoping you guys can help set my expectation for Unity 8 on 1610, because I know one of the headline features is Unity 8 will be available as an optional session, and I'm kind of curious how I should set my expectations during the review process. I have a feeling I should set them low, but I also don't want to just set them so low that anything's fine. Like, I don't know where this should be at, so I would love to hear
Wi-Fi.
I would love to hear both Popey and Wimpy's thoughts and anybody else's thoughts on it. Popey, can I start with you and say, what do you know about this, and have you tried it, and what do you think I should set my expectations towards?
I haven't tried it yet. So I'm only running 1604 here. So for anyone who wants to try the Unity 8 session, it'll be an option in 1610, not the default. Obviously.
Now, do I have to have Intel hardware for it to work?
Intel or the Nouveau video driver on NVIDIA. I've not tried AMD because I haven't touched AMD for years.
Yeah, same.
It also works in KVM, QEMU, and
nice.
VMware Fusion. I don't think it works in VirtualBox, but it works in KVM, QEMU.
It doesn't work in VirtualBox or with the NVIDIA proprietary drivers yet, but I have seen that people are actively working on that right now.
Right.
So
in terms of expectations,
and like apps too, what do you think? Like, include like the apps I might try.
So I think the default is just going to be pretty much the same apps that are available on the phone. The default apps. The same, the Ubuntu web browser, calendar, clock, calculator, terminal, those kind of like the basic apps.
No,
Go ahead,
not that much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the basic session is what you're going to get. So I'm testing at the moment the 1610 image behind me, and nice. the pre-installed apps that you'll have are the settings, the browser, and the terminal, and one other thing I can't remember without moving across the office and looking. So
I'm going to have a launcher, right? I'm going to have a launcher.
Fairly, and the launcher. So fairly minimal. But I'm expecting that you'll find that there'll be some documentation coming along fairly soon after the release that will explain how to install more of the Unity 8 apps and what have you.
I'm wondering, should I can I expect my X apps to work? Will Xmir be a thing that's functional?
Yeah, but you'll need to install some things. So there's a technology called Libertine.
Okay,
you'll need to install Libertine and Libertine Scope or Scope Libertine. I forget which way around the name of the package is. Once you've installed that, through the Libertine Manager, which will appear in the app launcher, you can create a container, and it does that for you. You just give it a name. And once you've created your container, you can then install debs into that container through a UI. So if you know that you want HexChat, you just type in, when it says what do you want to install, you just type HexChat in, hit enter. It installs that into the container and adds an icon to your desktop apps scope. And you'll be able to launch HexChat and that will open. And for example, today I've installed Chromium just fine, and HexChat and LibreOffice and all of those sorts of things. So the functions to do that stuff exist, and through Libertine you can also enable third-party repositories and PPAs. So I haven't tested this yet, but I was going to have a go a bit later, is getting things like Google Chrome and Steam running to see if I can get those going up inside Xmere. But so far everything I've tried works just fine, and that's what I'm using to sort of get my traditional desktop applications.
So what exactly is Libertine? I mean, specifically, Libertine itself is a container. Is it a cheroot? Is it?
It's an it creates LXD containers and then launches those applications and binds them to Xmere.
Sounds like a snap.
Almost, not quite.
Right.
So
okay.
you can create many containers. So you could create one container for each application, or you could create one container and install lots of different applications inside it.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of like a bottle in a sense, and an
interface there to help bind it to the host system.
Yeah, and then of course you've got snaps as well, because underneath it's just Ubuntu 16.10, so you can snap install bits and pieces. So if there are snaps out there that are using Mia, then they will work.
Interesting. Wow. And I think I'm going to kick the tires, but I suspect it probably won't be the main driver for me.
This is the first steps. It's not by any means the full Unity 8 desktop experience.
So that means that 16.10 though is shipping with X and Mir. So they're both in there and they're both usable if you have an open source driver.
Yep.
Hey, that's cool.
Yeah. So boy, isn't that interesting? Fedora's got Wayland in 25 and 16.10 has got Mir, and it's not like the two were like competing with each other. It's just sort of how it worked out.
It's just how it worked out, yeah. Maybe we'll have to compare them side by side.
Oh, Wes, I love that idea. We should totally try it out. Just see, and because we have a couple of Intel rigs around here with the open source driver, and I think that Bonobo right there is like in the sweet spot with the Novu driver.
Ooh,
so that might be a way to go. Well, I'll report back and see how it goes.
Right,
we'll see. That'll be part of the review, but not the review, I suspect. Now, before we go any further, I do want to play the interview that we had for you, and I want to mention Linux Academy for making the rest of the show possible. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Go there to learn about a platform built by Linux enthusiasts, educators, and developers that came together and said, let's help spread Linux. linuxacademy.com/unplugged is where you go to support this show. And now, with a new 7-day free trial.
Oh boy.
A 7-day free trial, which means no risk. Get in there, try it out.
You will be addicted.
Go wrap your head around something. They got these quick starts too if you don't have a lot of time. You can go deep dive into something. And of course, if you ever get stuck, instructor mentoring is available. And I love their video courses because not only are they self-paced, in-depth courses, but you can download and take their comprehensive study guides and bring them with you.
And they have everything. It's like, you prefer the long-form articles, you prefer videos. They have everything you might need.
And the community is growing like crazy, stacked full of Jupiter Broadcasting members. And speaking of the community, they now have external profiles. This is big because not only is Linux Academy going up in stature, so just linking to Linux Academy looks good on your resume, but now you can actually visually demonstrate in a public way what you've accomplished, which is great if you have a current employer that's helping you with your training.
Yep. Or you need to prove that you've got the skills for that new promotion.
This is brilliant. linuxacademy.com/unplugged is where you go, and check out their video they have posted over there too.
Whether you're an experienced sysadmin or new to the world of Linux, Azure, and AWS, OpenStack, and DevOps, a sharp skill set is an absolute necessity to succeed. Meet Linux Academy, an online Linux and cloud training platform that uses self-paced video courses and hands-on labs to give you real-world experience for a wide range of skills. Train for your certification, learn the latest DevOps tools, and grow your skill set to do better work. Linux Academy is not just a video library.
No, it's
Our
not.
scenario-based server labs and quiz system allow you to learn hands-on. We also have full-time human instructors who answer questions and help you earn that certification or promotion at work.
Differentiator.
We add new training every week, so you'll always be up to date on the latest tech. Sysadmins of every experience level use Linux Academy to stay on the bleeding edge of the Linux ecosystem. You should too.
linuxacademy.com/unplugged now with a 7-day free trial. And by the way, if you're going to be at Compute Midwest, go say hi to Linux Academy. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. And a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Unplugged program. And a big unthank you to my neighbor for mowing the lawn right in the middle of an ad read.
This is LUP time. Everyone knows that.
I mean, you know what's crazy too is
you need like an outside the studio, like an on-air light.
Yeah, right?
It wouldn't do anything, but it'd be very cool.
Now, answer me this. Are you not sitting inside a soundproofed, insulated room?
Yes,
is there
I
not,
absolutely am. Is this the world's loudest lawnmower?
This is an intense amount of soundproofing in here. There is an intense amount. All right. So that's neither here nor there. We need to move on. I could do a whole podcast on why lawnmowers are the evil thing ever. But I wanted to talk about our friend Andy from InnoCybe. Wes and I had a chat to chance with Andy. And InnoCybe is a pure play open daylight partner. They're going all in on open daylight.
Like one of the leaders.
Yeah. And their story is a fascinating one. And I have a couple of clips from the interview. I want to start with how by contributing upstream to open daylight, by closing bugs, by fixing little things here, by submitting patches, they ended up getting leads. And they ended up getting contracts and making money. And I thought that was sort of a fascinating question, or a fascinating answer to the question that we often ask: how do you make money with something that's free? How do you make money with open source? And so this is a little insight into that.
People typically will find out, about InnoCybe because they see that they see our names on the committers lists of the different projects, and then if they need help with an ODL project, then they typically call us. And so I would say that now people have definitely gone beyond the POC stage, the proof of concept stage, and they're deploying real things in production. And that's why we help them do that with our platform, get them to a commercial grade type of production deployment really quickly.
So that's a really interesting thing there. So you're picking up some customers because they're seeing the commits and they're seeing the names on the commits and they're saying, well, look at this work they're doing here. I want to work with them. I want to pick their brains. And then that's one of the ways the business relationship gets established.
That's exactly right. I mean, ODL is similar to other large open source projects in that it's very powerful and flexible, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. And then one of the negative things of that is it's really powerful and flexible, and there's a lot you can do with it. So you can get yourself in trouble pretty quickly. And so we help people get out, stay out of trouble, right? And kind of stay between the guardrails of what works, what doesn't work, what project is going to be useful for their specific use case. And we're sort of their lifeline into ODL.
So they're able to sort of make money around this open platform from a contributing standpoint. And I wondered then, once that transforms into a client, what is really their main value? And you were kind of getting at this question too when we were there. You're like, how do you add value? Since Open Daylight's an open platform, the documentation's all out there. Anyone can use it.
Why do you need to pay contractors, third-party companies?
Yeah, why am I hiring you? And this is probably true for all major open source projects.
Right.
His answer. I thought this was a good one.
Great question. So I'd say one thing it's really common is because it's open source and it's sort of enticingly easy to get started, you can start down a wrong path, and not necessarily wrong path, but it's just that what you're creating might be great for a lab environment, but
you need to understand how to really scale it.
Yeah, for scaling and getting into production and make sure it's a very robust solution that is not going to fail in corner cases, that sort of thing. That requires a different approach, right? And so when you're looking at things from a professional quality type of thing, then that's often where we see that if we can get involved sooner, it's better. To shorten the path to production quality.
It was nice of Andy to chat with us and get kind of an insight in how a company can make a decent living by supporting an open source project.
Which then goes, right back and supports that platform. The more people that are making money on it, right, the healthier future it'll have.
So there's a lot of different ways, and somehow There's a lot of different ways to crack this particular egg, and I just realized that they have eggs on there.
Right.
And then I just sort of realized why they have. Well, I was trying to, like, as I said, I was like, why do they have a cracked egg on there? Because the omelet reference. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to make an omelet between Patreon, direct funding, Bitcoin, and commercial contracts and sponsorships. And somehow, by the time we get to the end of this episode, we've
covered them all.
We had a theme. We ended up with a freaking theme on the Unplugged show that was totally unplanned, but yet somehow magically worked out.
Unplugged.
Yes. That'd be, wow. That's actually, that could be like our slogan, Wes.
Yeah, right?
Let's go with that. Well, so thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Unplugged program. Thank you to Andy for coming on. Thank you to Ike for letting us chat in the cone of silence. Sorry that didn't make it into the rest of the show for everybody else. And of course, thank you to Mr. Wimpy for chatting with us, and for Mr. Popey for letting me pick his brain today. I thought that was good. It's good to see him again. I hadn't been talked to him.
And to the rest of our wonderful Mumble
just
Room.
One of those things. Love those guys
Love
so
those
much
guys.
in that Mumble Room. All
Thank
of them.
you, guys.
All of them. Let's chat more, guys.
Yes.
Let's do it more. Let's
come
have
back maybe next week.
We could even have a post show. Oh, that's a great
Ooh,
idea.
yes,
Let's try
we're doing
that.
it.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for tuning this week's episode of the Unplugged program. See you next week. And don't forget to tune in live at jimmerlive.tv. All right, JBTitles.com. JBTitles.com. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you. That was a lot of fun. Mumble Room, I love you. You're fantastic.
Yes.
Now, I wanted to go to RMH, though, because he had something during the show that I wanted to punt to the post show. So I forgot what your point was, sir, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. So basically what I was saying is that there are a lot of people in the service industry like Noah, and I'm getting started with my own enterprise, and we are all just using this open source software mainly because it's free for the customer, so no licensing stuff, and we get regular updates and things like that. And in my business plan, I actually have 10% of my income dedicated to giving back to the community. Whatever I'm using most or deploying most for that month, I try to give back what I earned. And I think it's pretty important that we who use the software that gets created for free for us, for use, that we give back.
Yeah,
that's great.
That is. Good on you. We've been experimenting more and more here with giving back to open source. It's been a mixed bag for us. I mean, good, but people usually take the code we use and then they create something that competes with us. So that's when I was like, well, okay. But at the same time,
that's part and parcel, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Linux winter developments and vintage GTK3 are all towards the top.
Mm-hmm.
I like Linux winter developments. I think that must be a reference back to Popey's beer. How is that going, Popey?
All gone.
Oh,
excellent work.
I'm on my last vanilla cream right now. So there you go. Good on you, gentlemen, for both of you for recording double episodes and then still making it. Thank you very much. That is a lot.
Podcasting machine.
I don't think we'll be around next week because we're both
traveling.
Yeah.
Wow. Already? No, not traveling next week. What's next week?
It's a sprint.
Oh, it is. I thought that was in
Netherlands.
Okay. Oh, that is. Yep. Yeah. So
we'll miss you.
Yeah, we will. But I'd kind of love to know how that.
Yeah.
Kind of love to know how that goes. And aren't you guys having some press there this time, or some bloggers or something? So there might actually be coverage during the event. Is that right?
There's going to be some community people invited, and we encourage them to blog about their experience and talk about stuff. There's someone from the elementary project. There's some KDE people, and various people going.
Excellent.
Be sure to bring your score on the 40-yard dash.
Is that the first time you guys have done that?
No, we had one in Heidelberg a couple of months ago.
Right. So that was at the Snap one?
July.
Yeah. And this is another Snap one, Snappy Sprint. I mean, but there's going to be a whole load of
But
other
specifically,
people
that are in the press or like in blogs are going to be there, like not just
No, I don't think we've
okay.
got journalists, but we're encouraging those people who are there to
blog.
Share their
good.
experience.
Yeah. I thought the stuff that came out of the Snap Sprint was like the most information I'd ever seen out of an event like that, and it was a super good one for that to happen because it was a bunch of different projects coming together to work on Snap packages. So it seemed like
it's really an inflection point for the community there.
Mm-hmm. And some companies are very clever. They intentionally bring like favored bloggers along to blog about it, so that way they get great coverage. And I kind of thought maybe you guys are going that direction, but I kind of like the idea of just saying, no, just the people that attend, please do blog about it. Please share what you've done here, because
the real in the trenches view.
It does feel like to some people they probably don't even know that this isn't the second time you've ever done this. I think some people don't know that you guys get together and do this from time to time at all. I mean, it's not the second one you've ever done, right? They happen.
No, we do sprints all the time.
Exactly.
There's like I think there's 5 in a row in that one venue.
Right.
There's one right now, and then we're joining next week and so on.
Do you see why that is an important thing for the general Linux user base to know that even happens? Because it shows an output of Canonical's money and resources to further development of their platform. And it brings different people together. Like, that seems like something that I would be bragging about a lot more.
Right.
Yeah, I realize it's to further your own goals and to, work on stuff. But at the same time, it seems like a perfect opportunity to brag about some of the progress and work that's being done and the outreach that happens. So I don't understand why it doesn't get better coverage.
So, I mean, it can be quite intense. There's a whole load of sessions over the week. We schedule like tightly packed 1 hour to 2 hour sessions throughout the week. It's quite an intense amount of work that gets done, and then that gets decompressed at the end of the week, and some announcements come out of that. Maybe some press comes out of it, but we rely on the people coming to blog about it because people have different perspectives and people join different sessions. So, I might be in one session about Snap upstream related stuff, and then Martin will be in something related to desktop apps. And so if we both blogged about it, you'd get a different perspective from either of us, which is why we encourage everyone who goes to blog about it, because we get multiple perspectives with each person coming from their own project as well.
I would argue, I mean, that's absolutely the way to do it, but I would argue that it's not enough, because really the only time that gets any reasonable dissemination is if a larger outlet then picks up that developer's blog and covers it on their medium. And
right, but it depends how interesting that content is. If it was like, we sat in a room and figured out some API or something, nobody gives a toss about that. But unless it's like inside baseball, it's not interesting unless there's some big decision. Like maybe if there was an upstream there who said, okay, we're fully committing to this and we're going to deliver all of our apps. Or something
for
like
sure.
That.
Although I kind of still disagree, because you look at the Open Daylight Summit, that was pretty much just what you described, and we've still gotten like 3+ weeks of content out of it, and they got quite a bit of exposure out of it, because I like, for me, I wouldn't be the one going to the sprint event. But if I were going to the sprint event to cover the development, I would build a story around the people that are there and the work that's getting done, not the decisions that were made. So I think it just depends on the outlet. I mean, I know but you got work to do. I guess my point is just there's a lot of good damn work getting done, and it's not getting enough attention.
Exactly.
And I just wish we could solve that problem.
There's also not very many popular developers that have blogs, in the sense of like, a big time developer who also keeps track of stuff they do on a blog. And most of the time they maybe make one blog a year or something like that. And so no one's paying attention to it. So there's really there's no traction. So they might blog about it, but if the vast majority of people aren't looking, then it doesn't really matter, because if Canonical just did it where they just asked every blogger to do it, and if they did submit like an email and then they just made an aggregate page like, here's all the blogs about it, check them out, that would be good.
Like planet.ubuntu.com, for example. That's where you can find
but
it.
Most people don't even use that.
Yeah, I mean, your best bet is Softpedia picks it up, or Chris notices it, and things like that. I mean, that's really kind of your best bet. And the only reason I think I get a little righteous, just like 5% righteous about it, is when I get a whiff of an injustice, I start to get a little worked up. And so the injustice that I see here is, the perfect lens to look at this is the absolute talking points bullshit that came out after Snap packages were announced. People couldn't get
Right,
first of
right.
all, people that weren't involved with it couldn't get the terminology right. They attacked Canonical for not working with the community. They just all of the typical talking points that roll out when a Canonical initiative is announced. And I honestly feel like the work that gets done at some of these events would be a show me. So it would be a visceral demonstration that goes against that narrative.
Right, and it's like even if you don't agree with it, it's like the people are doing real work and there's momentum and a community behind it.
I'll speak to our PR people, Chris.
I'm sure. Oh well, the lawnmower guy's here, so that means I think we're all done. We'll go with Linux winter developments, I guess.